Hello everyone, welcome to another video on the Medidata Perspective channel. In our today's video, we'll be looking at indices in Pandas DataFrame. We'll be understanding the concept of indexing in Pandas and how to set and reset custom indices. So I have my notebook containing my sample data set already open. We'll be using this to first understand what indexing is before going to our survey data to carry out some examples. So if you take a look at our data frame which we've created here, it contains what looks like a column without a name, and this is our index. This is a default value created for our data frame, and it is basically just ranges of numbers. That is an integer identifier for this row. So we have zeros, 1 and 2. Sometimes it makes more sense to have a different identifier for each row, and that will basically be the label for that row. So for example, I can say we decide to use the name column of our data as the index value, as it is made up of unique values, right? So to view this our name column, I can say df and pass in the name of the column which we want to view. In our case, it is called name, right? So we have Alice, Bob and Charlie. So if I want to convert this column as our index, I can say df.set underscore index. Okay, so I'll pass in the name of the column which I want as our index. Okay, so if I go ahead and run this, we can see we now have the name column at our index position. So if I go ahead and print out our data frame once more, we'll find out that our data frame did not actually change. It still has the default index of 0 and 1, and that is because Panda does not do all these changes in place except if we specifically ask it to do so. So if we want our changes to be in place, we would have to specify that by using the in place argument. So if I say in place equals to true and go ahead and run this now, I can now go ahead and print out our data frame once more, and now you will see that our changes have been put in place. So previously in our last videos, when we try to access a row, we used the loc method, right? We said df.loc and we passed in our row label, which was in that case 0 as at then. But if we do this now, we're going to get in an error because our row label has changed. So if I run this, I'm going to get an error. Okay, so now since our row label has been changed to our names, we have to use these row label names to identify any row we're trying to access. So for example, if we're trying to get this row of Alice, I can now go ahead and pass in Alice to our square bracket, and if I run this now, we're going to get that row containing information regarding Alice. So we have age 25 and city as New York. I can often go ahead and specify the column which I need. So for example, I can say I need the city column, and it's going to give me information regarding only that. So we have New York. But remember that you can also use the iLook method to access these rows, right? Because it makes use of integers indices. So for example, to get this same row, I can say df.iLook, and since it uses integers indices, this is having the index of 0 by default. So I can pass in 0, and since we want a city column, this is having the index of 1 by default. So if I pass in 1 and run this, we're going to get New York also. Now you can also reset your index after setting it by using the reset underscore index method. So I can say df.reset underscore index and call this method, and I can go ahead and put the in place argument as true. So we can now go ahead and run this and print our data frame once more. And if I go ahead and run this, so you can now see that we've gone back to our previous data frame where we have our index as 0s, 1 and 2. So now let's go ahead and look at our survey response and carry out some examples there. Previously, this is our survey data set where we have response ID as a column, main branch and employment. So what we'll be doing now is to convert this response ID as our index column. So let's scroll down and go ahead and do that. So to do that, all we have to do is call the name of our data set, which is data, and say dot set index, and the name of the column you want to set your index as, and in this case we're using the response ID, right? Let me go ahead and create an extra cell to print just the first 5 rows of our data so that I don't go ahead and scroll up. So we have response ID, and let's go ahead and confirm if we spelled it correctly. So okay, this is capital letter I, right? So let's say response ID and run this. Okay, so now you can see now we have our response ID as our index. And remember, to put this in place, we can say in place equals to true. Okay, so if I go ahead and run this, I can check just the first 5 rows of our data using the .head method, and let's print this out. So you can see we have our response ID as our index now. So we have 1 2 3 4 5, and we have our columns of data. So aside from setting an index when creating a data frame, we can also set our index when importing in our data. So to do this, we can add in an argument when we are importing this our data in. So for example, I can scroll up and say when we wanted to import this our response survey data in, we can set our index with it and say index col, and specify that column which you want as the index. So in this case, we can say our response ID to be our index, right? So we can say response ID, and if I go ahead and run this now, we are importing in our data, and in the same time we are setting the index. So you can see we now have our response ID as our index. To confirm the column you have as your index, you can also use the .index attribute to do that. So I can say data.index, and it's going to go ahead and print out that column you have as your index. So you can see we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 etc. as a list, and you can see those are the various values in our index. Also with this, we can sort our index alphabetically in ascending or descending order. So by default, this is already in a descending order, right? So let me show you how we can sort this in ascending order. For example, we want to get the highest number at the top, right? So we can say data dot sort underscore index and specify how you want your data to be sorted. So for example, we can say ascending, and we can put this as false. Okay, since we want this our data to be sorted in descending order. So let me go ahead and run this, and you can see now that we have the highest number of responses at the top. Okay, so we have 73,268 as the first response, 73,267, and so forth. So with this, you can be able to sort your data frame. So also remember that you have to add the in place arguments as true to make this sorting permanent. So we can say in place equals true if we want our sorting method here to be permanent. Okay, so let me go ahead and run this, and we can now go ahead and print the first 5 rows of this data and say data dot head and run. So you can see we've gotten our first 5 rows. So as you can see, setting our index when working in a data frame is very useful when using the .ilook method. As with this, it helps us to easily access any row of data which we are trying to get. So for example, if I want to get the response of this 73,265, I can just say data.look and use that label. Okay, so I can just copy this and paste this here, and with this I'll be able to get all the responses regarding this row of data. So you can see we have the main branch, employment, remote work, and all the answers. For example, if I want to see just the answer for our main branch, I can still go ahead and add this main branch as a column and say comma, I just want answers for our main branch column, and run this. And with this I'm not primarily a developer, but I write code sometimes as part of my work. So you see why it is important for us to set our indexes when working in Pandas data frame. So this brings us to the end of this video. With this, I hope we have been able to understand the concept of label indexing and how it can be used. In this video, we looked at how we can set our index to any column in our data frame, how we can use the reset index method, how we can also get our column, which is our index, using the .index attribute, and also how to use the index_call argument when importing in a data frame. In our next video, I'll be looking at how we can filter for data in data frame. So remember to subscribe for more data analysis content like this. Like and share these videos to your friends and loved ones who are interested in learning Python programming for data analysis. And don't forget to drop your comments and questions in the comment section below. Bye for now, and see you in my next video.